Fabricadabra at LPL presents Fabric Pictures, a grab-and-go kit. Here is a fabric picture of a pear. We're going to have an applique surrounded by hand embroidery and then binding along the edges to give it that picture frame. We're going to start out with one 10 by 10 inch square of plain solid cotton fabric. I chose a creamy white colored muslin. So here are a couple of pieces of fabric. You're going to find that in your kit. You'll have one or more pieces of scraps, and you're going to use those to cut patterns out of to make appliques. You'll also find one or more squares of Heat and Bond Light. This is an iron-on adhesive, and what's good about it and why it's called light is because you can sew through it. So it has a textured side and a paper back that can be peeled off. Next we have bias tape, which we'll use to do the binding on the edge of the square of fabric. If you don't like bias tape, you can always make your own binding tape using a 2.5 inch long strip of regular cotton fabric. Also in the kit, you will find any patterns that you need and a picture for frame of reference so you see how you might want to lay out the fabric picture. Okay, so here we have one of the pieces of fabric and we have some Heat and Bond Light. Okay, that's your textured side and your paper side. Okay, you're going to flip over your fabric so that it's facing down, and then you're going to put the textured side down on top of the back of that fabric. Okay, then you're going to grab your iron and you are going to iron it on, again, on medium heat for about 6 to 10 seconds. You may need a little more, you may need a little less, but usually at least 6 seconds, and then 10 seconds is usually plenty. And then that is going to make it so that it is adhered to the Heat and Bond. And just check the edges, make sure nothing's peeling off where it shouldn't. Okay, so now the next step is to place your pattern pieces on it. So this is sped up a little bit, so if it looks a little weird, sorry. You're going to trace it out. The reason I'm doing it on the front of the fabric is I'm using a washable pin. So when I wash this fabric, it's going to disappear. You could also use chalk. Then you're going to cut the pattern out. So you have the first leaf, and then you're going to do your second leaf. And there we go. Second leaf. Put it off to the side. Okay, now we're going to do the pear. So again, you have your fabric, put it face down. Take your Heat and Bond Light, put it textured side down. Iron, medium heat, 6 to 10 seconds. My iron took 10 seconds because it's breaking. I'm buying a new one. But yours may only take about 6 seconds. Okay, and then you want to let it cool for a little while after it before you cut your pattern out. Now this is where I flipped it on the other side. Now if you wanted to use a permanent pen or a pencil or something like that, this is paper, so go ahead and trace it out on that side and then just cut it out. It's either way, however you want to do it. This is probably the better way, whether you have a permanent pen or a disappearing ink pen or chalk or pencil or whatever. You should probably just always do it on the back. Okay, so there we go. Got our pear. Okay, so now we're going to lay things out. So there's my picture there as a kind of frame of reference, but I've decided to, you see it has like a branch and then 2 leaves and a pear coming off the branch. And what I'm going to do is a pear and with a stem and 2 leaves coming off the stem. So that's actually what my finished product is going to be. So take your time to kind of lay it out before you peel the backs off. You could do it after you peel the backs off. It's not that big a deal. It doesn't stick until you iron it. But it's nice to get a kind of a layout. Now, as with almost everything I do, it changes at the last minute. So this will not be my final product. Okay, so now it's time to peel off the back. Do the pear first. Any big part, that everything else is going to be playing off of, do that first. So whether you're doing a pear pattern or some other pattern, always good to start with the biggest piece first. So I'm going to place that. Keep in mind that you're going to want to leave enough room for your binding. You're going to, you may want to center it. You may not want to center it. Think of those things as you're putting it down. Okay, and then you iron it. Again, medium heat, 6 to 10 seconds. And then you're going to want to, after you're done ironing it, you're going to want to just check the edges and make sure that they don't peel up. If they do peel up, apply a little bit more heat, maybe 2 to 3 seconds, and then just keep checking. Okay, so right now I'm just going to kind of show you, see, I'm testing out that edge to make sure that it's stuck down. Okay, everything looks good. It's not going to fall off. Okay, there we go. So next you'll do your leaves. Okay, I already done those. Okay, so here is what's called embroidery floss. This is what it looks like when you buy it. It comes in all kinds of different colors. I'm going to be using a black thread, but you could use any kind of color you wanted. And it has a whole bunch of, it has like 5 or 6 strands. And so what you want to do is use 2 strands. You could go 3. I wouldn't do 1. 3's a little thick for me. I like 2 strands. So that's what I'm peeling off right now. You're just going to kind of peel it apart, and it's going to want to kind of knot up. And so you just kind of fiddle with it to get it to all come apart. And you don't have to do, you can cut in smaller, slightly smaller lengths so that it's a little bit easier to pull apart before you do the pulling apart. But you don't want to cut it too small because you want to have enough thread to actually sew with. So here I'm picking up a needle. You can use any kind of hand sewing needle, but try and find one with a really with a big hole, so a needle hole, the eye of the needle. So right here, this is me fitting in. As you can see, this is specifically an embroidery needle, so that has a really long and wider hole, and yeah. So I have 2 strands of embroidery thread, and yeah. Okay, so now we're going to tie a knot, and you're actually going to want to tie 2 knots. If you tie just 1 knot, it's actually going to more than likely pull through the fabric. So, and there's different ways of tying. This is what I'm doing. I'm sure there's easier ways, and there's other tutorials on how to do this, so feel free to watch those if my video isn't enough for you. That's totally understandable. This is the first time of me filming hand sewing, and so it's not the greatest video. But anyway, so there's my second knot. As you can see, there's my finger, there's my second knot. All right. And so it's a thicker knot. So now we're going to pick up our thing, and we're going to start out on one of the leaves because I want to show you what's called a running stitch. And it's the easiest stitch you can ever do. So you're going to start from the back, pull your needle out through the front from the back until it stops at that knot. Then you're going to put your, as you can see, I'm putting my needle in and out, in and out, in and out, trying to stay kind of the same length and in between stitches as well as the same length of stitches, but it's okay if you don't. Mine's certainly not perfect. And then right here, I'm putting in that last little stitch there, but I decided to put another stitch over that very first stitch I did because I just didn't feel like it was, I don't know, like it was visible enough. So that's why I'm doing that. So I flipped it over so that we can lock in this stitch basically. And so what you want to do is put the needle under the thread, and then they'll pull it through until there's a bit of a loop left. And then you're going to poke your needle through the loop and pull it tight. And that creates the first knot, and then you want to do a second one just to give it more stability. Back in through the hoop. Okay, pulled it tight, and now you can cut your threads. Try not to cut your knot. Okay, so that's your that was your running stitch. Now in the meantime, I did a back stitch on that other leaf, and I didn't like the way the video came out. It didn't look right, so I'm actually going to show you how to do that a little bit later. A running, not a running stitch, a back stitch. This one right here that I'm doing is called a blanket stitch. So you come up near the top of the applique, that edge, okay, you're going to come up from the back of the fabric, and then you're going to go down through the front. You're going to go down a little bit further into the applique itself. So you're going to go underneath it. And then I think I did another one where I came out from behind. So now that you're at the top and behind, you can go in from the front and then do a little stitch like that. And then you're going to go through the hoop and pull it tight. Okay, now don't pull it down, pull it to the side, because that's the way you want your stitch to look. Okay, and this is a decorative stitch, and it's really nice. It's called a blanket stitch because they usually use it to bind the edges of blankets made of fleece or felt or wool or something like that that doesn't fray easily. And it's just, it just gives it kind of a pretty look to it. So, okay, so I made a second blanket stitch, and I'm about to work on my third one. Now, if you put it in through the back, okay, come out through the top, and if you're holding that thread down, you're actually already in the loop, and so you just pull it tight. You don't have to worry about sticking your needle through the loop. It's already through the loop. Okay, so here I am, and I've done the whole thing, and I'm down to my last stitch. So I'm just going to go straight across into that top level. Okay, here we go. And then I'm going to come out through the bottom. So I'm kind of going backwards. Pull it tight, and there you go. And so now you're going to go back out through the top and come out on the back, and now you're going to lock it down just like you did with the running stitch. Again, you want to catch a little bit of the fabric underneath the thread. Pull it through, put it through the hoop, pull it tight. Do a second one. You can do it from a different angle. I like to do that. I don't know why. I don't know if it helps or not. Pull it tight, cut your threads. Here is my sort of quicker tutorial on the back stitch. So you come up from the back, make a stitch. Okay, sorry, I'm a little spastic. Okay, so now you got that one stitch. So we're going to flip it over to look at the back. Okay, so there's the top. And what we want to do is go about the same length up through the back, and then you're going to go backwards to the top of that stitch, and that's where you're going to go in. Okay, and then you're going to come out the other side, and you're just going to keep doing that in a line until you're finished. Here is where I'm going to show you how to make your own bias tape or binding. Okay, this is what bias tape looks like. It's got two sides bent in towards the middle, or folded into the middle, and then the middle is folded. And so you're going to start out with a 2.5 inch wide strip of fabric. You're going to cut it into 4 separate sections. 2 of those sections will be 11 inches long. This is a 12-inch ruler, and then 2 of the sections will be 10 inches long. Okay, so here's the first strip. You're just going to fold over that edge towards the middle, not quite into the middle, and then you're going to iron it down so it holds its edge. You can do the same for the other side, and then you're going to fold it in half, and you're going to iron it down again. There we go. Here is where we're going to attach the first of the binding strips. You want to start with your 10-inch long strip. Okay, and you're basically going to wedge the fabric square into the middle of the tape. Okay, just like that. And then you're going to pin it in place. I'm pinning it in place. You don't have to pin it in place unless you are either hand sewing it or machine sewing it. I'm going to be machine sewing this. So I definitely want to pin this in place to keep it all even and nice and pretty. You could apply the binding tape using some sort of adhesive like hot glue, tacky glue, hem tape, just anything like that. And in which case you wouldn't need to pin it. You would simply just apply the glue and then put your fabric in between and then press it down. So here it wasn't exactly flush, so I'm just kind of cutting the overage off. Okay, so next you're going to want to do this. You want to get this part right before you sew down the other 2 edges. And I find that this is a good way of binding. You may find a different way that you like to bind. This is the way I'm going to do it. So you're going to take your 11-inch long strips, and the reason you're doing 11-inch long is so that you can tuck in the 2 ends, and that way you don't have any frayable edges that are poking out. Okay, it's going to contain all the frayable edges, and that's really what binding is for. Okay, so here what you're going to want to do is iron that crease so that it holds, so that you're not constantly fumbling with it when you're trying to sew. And you may have to make adjustments to this several times. I did, to get it completely flush with the other binding edge. So see right here, it's not completely flush, and so I'm just gonna redo one or both of those sides to get it looking pretty. Okay, don't forget to iron it down. Always have your iron handy when you're sewing. Okay, and so it's basically going to be put on the same way. It's just going to be wedged in. You're going to pin it down, and then you're going to sew it. But we're not going to sew it just yet because we have to sew those other 2 edges first. You could technically wait and just sew all the edges together, but I like doing it this way because I like sewing 2 edges first and then the other 2 edges. It's just easier when you're sewing, especially if you're a beginning sewer or sewist. Okay, so here I have it in my sewing machine. I'm just doing a straight basic stitch. As you can see, just go straight down, take your pins out. You don't want to hit those with the needle on your machine, as it could bend it. Yep, take the pin out. And when you get to the end of that, and also when you start the stitch, you always want to do a little lock stitch, which is a reverse stitch, using your machine. If you're hand sewing, you don't have to worry about that. You lock it down a different way. Okay, so that's what those look like. Okay, looks pretty. I used the contrasting thread color. And now as you can see, I've pinned on the other 2 sides, the longer sides. And I'm just going to sew those down. See, I did the little reverse stitch. And I'm just going to go through, pull my pins out, and keep going. Okay, and there we go. That is my fabric picture. I hope you enjoyed this craft. Thank you for joining me.